They didn't even knock. ICE showed up in the middle of the night while Jasmine was still crying from an argument with Gino. As if the walls weren't already thin, neighbors were on the phone with 911 after hearing glass shatter, furniture hitting walls, and someone screaming about betrayal. When officers arrived, TLC's production crew was already outside the house, shaking, silent, and holding up their walkies like riot shields. Inside, Jasmine's world was about to collapse. And the cameras were rolling the entire time. This wasn't a scene. This wasn't scripted. Gino had allegedly accused her of hiding messages from a man in Panama. Jasmine denied it, swore he was twisting texts out of context, but the intensity had already hit red zone. Her voice bled into the street. Gino's wasn't much louder, but it was sharp, defensive. Two people combusting under exposure, immigration pressure, a collapsing idea of forever. Then the cops came. Minutes later, ICE followed. Welcome to an import. This is your no-filter zone for 90-day fiancé drama, real talk, and emotional autopsies. If your jaw is already on the floor, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments. Was this love gone toxic or doomed from day one? Jasmine didn't know the visa was already declined. In her mind, the wedding paperwork was still in limbo, slow but moving. She had no idea the rejection letter had already gone out, but ICE had it. And that's what mattered. They asked her for ID, then took it, then asked her to sit, then cuffed her. That's when she froze. Word is, she thought it was part of the show. She looked straight into the camera and whispered to the sound guy, "Is this real or for TV?" Seconds later, she screamed Gino's name, reached for his arm, and broke down like someone watching her entire dignity get pulled out the door. The footage is locked now. Too raw for TLC, too messy, too legally risky. But insiders say it shows Jasmine in full panic, screaming, "Tell my mom I'm sorry," while producers stood by in shock. They didn't help, didn't step in, didn't even stop filming until officers physically blocked the lenses on their way out. And yet, somehow, this wasn't even the worst part, because according to people close to production, they knew. Not about the fight, not about ICE exactly, but about the visa, about the rejection, about the timeline that made this arrest possible. No one told Jasmine, nobody warned her on camera. Off camera? Also no. At least that's what she's claiming now. The marriage interview had failed weeks prior. The Department of Homeland Security had flagged inconsistencies between their stories about child support, living arrangements, medical insurance, even bedtimes. So why were cameras still rolling in Michigan as if everything was fine? What were they filming for? If they knew her time was up, was Jasmine set up to fall? Or did Gino quietly make a decision that pulled the plug before ICE even showed up because somebody signed something? And we're about to find out who. Stick around. You haven't heard the worst betrayal yet. Rewind to 2 weeks before the ICE arrest. Jasmine and Gino walked into their final marriage visa interview in matching neutral tones, like they were trying to mute the chaos they'd rehearsed the story. The kind of questions they'd practiced 100 times in hotel rooms. Who pays the bills? Who sleeps on what side of the bed? How did you meet? What are your future plans? But none of that prepared Jasmine for what came next. According to leaked interview summaries from DHS, their answers didn't just slightly deviate. They clashed. Gino allegedly told the officer that Jasmine had never worked in the U.S., while Jasmine insisted she was working online. Gino said he was supporting her. She said they split finances. Gino allegedly mentioned separate bedrooms during fights. Jasmine said they always shared a bed. On paper, it sounded like two strangers applying for a visa. But in reality, it sounded a lot like a fragile couple stuck in high-stress mode. Those interviews can last 20 minutes or feel like a 3-hour trial by fire. Jasmine didn't walk out. She broke down mid-session, cried, repeatedly tried to clarify, told them she was overwhelmed, had been having anxiety attacks, and that Gino didn't help prep her because he was working too much. An officer reportedly offered her tissues, but the red flags were already stacking up too fast. The file was marked possible fraud, subject to denial by the end of the same day. The most painful part? She didn't even know Jasmine left that room thinking it went badly, but not that badly. She told people close to her she felt disrespected but hopeful. TLC production was still filming happy-at-home shots. The next morning, Gino didn't say anything. He didn't suggest a lawyer, didn't warn her to slow down, reconsider her next steps, or brace for bad news. He acted like the process was moving forward as usual. He left her spinning, and that silence might have been the most deliberate move of all. Because someone close to immigration leaked that Jasmine's visa had been formally denied by mail. A letter was sent to their Michigan address. Gino, as her sponsor, would have received a copy. Not a maybe, it's standard process. But Jasmine kept smiling for the cameras. Meanwhile, a cold wall was rising between what she thought was coming, marriage, and what was already lost. Her legal right to stay in the country retention barrier hits here. Ready? Hang on. Because right after the interview, Gino allegedly told producers he was done. Not with the show, with her. He didn't say it loud. He didn't even say it to her face at first. But someone in production apparently overheard him talking about pulling the support and letting the government handle it. And that one sentence changes everything. Sponsorship isn't just a title, it's a legal relationship. Once you promise to support someone applying for a green card, withdrawing that promises slams the door shut, it erases the foundation of the whole application. And Jasmine allegedly never saw that coming. She told close friends she thought the government messed up, that some paperwork must have been delayed, but legally, it was over the second her sponsor pulled back. A quiet signature in an office, no explanation, no confrontation, no warning. So the question becomes, did Gino sabotage her papers on purpose? Or was he also just drowning in the dysfunction? We already know ice doesn't knock twice, and Jasmine had no clue that next knock would be for her. But the bombshell isn't that the visa got denied, it's who knew and who lied. In any other situation, a rejected visa would have been the finish line. Bad news arrives, people regroup, someone notifies the person affected, and plans change. That's the protocol. But none of that happened here. The denial letter sat in that Michigan mailbox like a grenade with no pin. Jasmine kept living like she still had time, because no one told her she didn't. According to people close to production, the rejection notice was officially issued by immigration weeks before ICE arrived. It didn't magically disappear in the system. That letter was sent to the address tied to Gino as the sponsor. He would have been the first to know his application was denied and that any continued stay from Jasmine would soon count as an overstay. But for some reason, no one said a word. Not to Jasmine, not to the cast, not even to the audience. TLC cameras kept rolling as if her immigration case was business as usual. And every day, the clock was ticking. The denial wasn't vague. It was concrete. Immigration marked the case as closed due to inconsistencies in the interview and lack of valid sponsor support. Gino's signature had already pulled the ground from under the entire case. Once it was processed, a final notification was mailed, and that's when Jasmine's legal rights in the U.S. were days from collapsing. But get this, she didn't even find out from a lawyer. She found out after DHS officers showed up with her file in hand. Only after that did she get confirmation that her visa had already been denied, and not recently, not yesterday. Weeks ago? Stop right here for a second, because it gets worse. When this bombshell hit the TLC offices, insiders say legal departments were blindsided. One source close to the show's post-production team said, "The internal thread lit up like a dumpster fire. No one knew if they could even legally use the footage anymore." Jasmine's lawyer demanded a full explanation, but was reportedly told it's under review. That same source later claimed TLC had been informed there may have been an issue with Jasmine's documents before the ICE incident, even possibly during production. They were told to keep filming anyway, but to be careful with how she was framed in scenes. Careful. That word has now become a lightning rod. Because if even one person with power on that set had access to the timing of the rejection and still chose to let her film happily, talk marriage, talk visas, they weren't being careful. They were being reckless or strategic. Behind closed doors, Jasmine's lawyer is said to have called the situation gross negligence at best, or exploitation wrapped up in a contract. Their team is now reviewing legal options to challenge what they believe was a failure to inform a key party of her changed immigration status while cameras played pretend. And if TLC's team did know and filmed her anyway, that's not just a production error. That's commercially packaged heartbreak. And what about Gino? He's claiming he didn't understand what he signed, that it was just a form suggested by someone behind the scenes. Maybe a miscommunication, maybe a moment of frustration. But the damage was done, and his name was tied to the one document that led immigration officials straight to Jasmine's door. Meanwhile, Jasmine, wearing lashes and a borrowed dress, was filming a confessional promo about what kind of wedding bouquet she wanted. Here's your next cliffhanger. Ask yourself this. If TLC didn't know, why did they suddenly pull all her promotional footage 3 days after the arrest? Why were scenes blurred, storylines redirected, Instagram teasers deleted? Because the truth wasn't adding up. And someone was trying to airbrush the evidence. And yet, the biggest eraser was silence. For weeks, Jasmine cried herself to sleep, thinking it was a bureaucratic mistake, that the system had chewed her up, that somehow her visa slipped through the cracks. She didn't get it. How did things go downhill so fast? Then the leak hit. An immigration document surfaced online in a 90-day fan group, stamped from the Department of Homeland Security, showing clear text, petitioner voluntarily withdrew support dated before her arrest, with his full legal name at the bottom. Gino. He didn't just know the visa was dead. He killed it. The same day Jasmine was filming a scene about picking wedding colors, Gino had already pulled the only legal thread keeping her in the country. And Jasmine had no idea. No announcement, no fight, no warning. He didn't sit her down, didn't try to talk it through. He literally left her standing there with a camera crew and a fantasy that had expired on paper. So now the question is why? Was it revenge? Spur-of-the-moment anger from a fight producers didn't even air? Jasmine apparently argued with him about finances the week before. Some claim she threatened to fly back to Panama without telling him. Others allege Gino had been quietly building resentment ever since the topless spa argument went viral. Or was it fear? Because according to insider reports, Gino had confided in producers just days prior. He allegedly told one of them he felt trapped, that Jasmine's temper scared him, and he wasn't sure she loved him anymore, unless there were cameras around. Could that be true? Possibly. But if someone's scared, they don't go quiet, sign legal paperwork, and make sure the cameras are still rolling. They get help, or they leave. What Gino did was different. It wasn't an exit. It was a trigger pull. Listen closely to this next line. It changes everything. After the arrest, Gino gave a brief statement online where he said, "I never wanted any of this. I didn't mean for it to get to this point." Okay, but here's the reality. When you sign a formal withdrawal, when you remove your name from a government document, and when that document is the only thing protecting someone from deportation, you can't say this wasn't intended. You can say you regret it. You can say you didn't understand the timing. But you can't say that wasn't your pen. The timing matters. The motive matters more. Because shortly after his withdrawal, TLC camera plans changed. Jasmine's storyline, originally heading toward a marriage special, was suddenly shifted. There were changes to the scheduling. Producers added more B-roll. Interview questions started circling around what Jasmine's backup plans might look like. And then a legal note was added to her contract. Insiders say it limited what she could discuss publicly about her immigration status, even off camera. So now we're asking, did Gino act on his own? Or was this influenced by production? Some crew members allege he was encouraged to take time to protect himself legally. One producer allegedly told a TL lawyer, off the record, "No one wants a crisis scene on tape unless we're covered." So while Gino signed the withdrawal, Jasmine signed up to be blindsided, and every second after that was filmed like the drop hadn't already happened. This wasn't just heartbreaking, it was calculated. The emotional collapse, caught on camera, was framed as a relationship tension. But privately, multiple crew members now say they were told to treat the story as if everything's still pending, until they got final clearance on what footage could be aired. And here's the darkest twist. According to a leaked email chain, someone from TLC Legal flagged a concern before the arrest occurred, noting that ICE may act if paperwork was processed ahead of schedule, meaning someone on the production chain saw this crisis accelerating. They watched the clock tick down, and they didn't stop it. So now the question shifts. What footage did they shoot that we still haven't seen? What moments between Jasmine and Gino were left on the editing room floor? Because they proved too real? What else was covered in silence, masked as reality, and monetized as love gone wrong? It doesn't end with a signature. There's another layer even deeper. And it might just involve the final call made by TLC before Jasmine touched ICE custody. They filmed it. Every real, raw, unstaged second. The handcuffs, the pleading. That split second when Jasmine still thought it was a prank or some cruel storyline twist. The devastation on her face when it clicked that ICE didn't care about the storyline, or lighting, or contracts, or roll cameras. She looked right at someone behind the scenes and begged, "Please stop this. Tell them it's not real." But in that moment, it was more real than anything else TLC had ever put on air. And yet, no one saw that footage. Not the viewers, not even most of the crew. It vanished. Sources inside post-production say that the arrest footage was cut immediately after legal review editors were ordered to scrub continuity references. Frames were blurred, timestamps disappeared, and anything that could legally associate TLC with a live legal proceeding was permanently frozen in the vault. Within 48 hours, a new storyline appeared. Jasmine suddenly returned to Panama to visit her family due to stress. No mention of the ICE van, no mention of the handcuffs, no mention of Jasmine screaming, "Gino, please don't let them take me." Instead, the show pivoted like nothing happened. She was rebranded as an overwhelmed fiancé taking time off. Gino was left looking sad and confused, staring out the window like a man abandoned, not like a man who signed away her right to stay. Pause here. This is where many fans felt the punch in the gut. Because when dedicated, loyal 90-day viewers watched that episode, they weren't watching a spin-off storyline begin. They were watching a cover-up unfold in real time. The betrayal didn't just happen to Jasmine, it happened to the audience. People tuned in thinking they were watching real lives in real distress. Not a stitched-together decoy plot meant to avoid a lawsuit. Fan forums erupted, Reddit lit up in rage. On Instagram, followers asked over and over, "Why didn't you say she was deported? Why lie about where she went? Why pretend everything's fine?" And TLC, they said nothing. Not even a formal post. But behind the scenes, things weren't quiet. Verified leaks from someone inside post-production hit the internet like napalm. A string of emails, allegedly exchanged between producers and legal consultants, revealed something jaw-dropping. One email read, "Change the plot to reflect temporary travel plans. Do not use terms like deportation or removal unless cleared by legal." Another said bluntly, "We were informed there's exposure risk if footage of arrest is mismanaged, archive it. Rewrite." Not get clarity. Not pause production. Rewrite. Producers weren't debating whether Jasmine had been deported. That part was fact. The only question was how to spin it, and how to avoid looking complicit in a public disaster that apparently some insiders expected. Now think about that. This wasn't TLC reacting to a spontaneous legal emergency. This was TLC allegedly preparing a second version of her story, a cleaner one. One where Jasmine left the country with her dignity intact, not crying in a van with a mic pack still taped to her back. And yes, crew confirmed her mic was still on during the arrest. The audio? Chilling. Several production team members who heard the raw footage say Jasmine cried until her voice cracked, pleading for someone to call her mom. Someone in the background says, "Why didn't anyone stop her?" That person was allegedly a junior producer, one who wasn't in control of final edits, and Gino, he was filmed for a reaction shot, not intervening, just sitting on the porch, head in his hands, while crew rolled B-roll of his confused emotional state. That scene stayed, Jasmine's didn't. The dual narrative was clear. One version was messy, emotional, and unsellable. The other was marketable, controllable, and fake. Retain this. If your reality TV needs a second version of reality, was it ever real to begin with? Ethical boundaries in scripted reality have always been blurry, producer-fed story arcs, reenactments, subtle prompts during confessionals, those we've known about. But tempering the truth of a government-ordered removal from the country while continuing to air feel-good drama? That's not blurry. That's deliberate. And Jasmine, according to people closest to her legal team, wasn't even aware, at least not fully, that her ICE detention was archived for years before it might be allowed to surface, if ever. In private, she was devastated. In the show, she was conveniently edited out. Jasmine's lawyer reportedly demanded all raw footage be preserved as legal evidence should it be needed in possible future litigation against production. Whether this leads to a court case is unclear. What is clear is this: a woman cried out for help, and producers wrote it out of the script. Which brings us to the next cliffhanger. If TLC was willing to erase an arrest, what else disappeared from the screen? We're not through yet, because the next production decision didn't happen in Michigan or in the U.S. at all. It happened across the ocean, in Panama. By the time Jasmine quietly left ICE custody, she wasn't headed for a fairy tale reunion or a fresh start. She was driven to a friend's condo in Florida, stripped of her legal status, her contract on pause, and her future hanging in limbo like carry-on luggage, barely zipped. She'd lost everything that made her feel like she was building a life in America. Her partner, her visa, her reputation. And yet, TLC still tried to send cameras. They wanted closure scenes. One producer allegedly requested clips of her reflecting on her journey, packing her bags, walking along a beach at sunset. A source close to the crew said she laughed through her tears and told them, "I've given you enough already." She declined. Instead, Jasmine recorded a few whispered voice notes that were never meant for public ears, but some of them still leaked. One clip shared among Panamanian media allegedly captured her saying, "I gave my dreams to this country. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't deserve to feel like a criminal." She wasn't speaking to the show. In that moment, she was speaking to herself. Need a reason to stick with this story a little longer? Here it is. Because even as Jasmine was relearning how to exist in a place she'd once left behind, TLC was already making calls to Panama. But let's not skip the heartbreak. A few days after disappearing from U.S. screens, Jasmine broke her silence. She posted a short message on Instagram, already archived and deleted. It read, "Love can take you to the edge of the world and abandon you there." The comments exploded. Thousands of fans begged her to speak the full truth. Others blamed her for being too emotional on camera, too dependent on Gino, too unfiltered. But the backlash against Gino, that came fast and brutal. Fans turned on him with surgical precision. His posts were flooded with accusations. People asked what kind of man watches the woman he promised to marry get taken by ICE and says, "Nothing." One viral comment read, "You didn't deserve her, and you sure didn't fight for her." And Gino stayed quiet for a while. When he finally broke silence, he didn't post a full explanation. He shared a dimly lit selfie video from inside his car, voice trembling, eyes red. "I didn't handle things right. I made a lot of mistakes. I never wanted this to happen to her," he said. But those words fell like gravel, too late, too soft, too incomplete. Because yes, Jasmine had her flaws. Everyone saw them. The jealousy, the outbursts, the high expectations. But what viewers also saw was someone who came for love, stayed for hope, and left with nothing but trauma. Panama didn't greet her with silence, though her family welcomed her at the airport with hugs and tears. Her mother, in a quiet interview, said, "We lost her to the noise of fame. Now we just want her to feel safe." National media in Panama covered her return like the homecoming of a star who got chewed up and spit out by American television. One outlet even questioned why TLC aired so much of her vulnerability, but none of her truth. And then came the next twist. A source embedded inside TLC's overseas production arm leaked documents suggesting that producers had already been in contact with Jasmine's team about a possible new show working title. Jasmine, starting over. Yep, the same woman they erased from a finale, now being pitched as the center of a comeback. The concept, reportedly in talks, would follow her post-deportation journey, rebuilding her life back home, navigating what she called her second exile, and possibly even filming a reunion with Gino, if he agreed. Because here's what only insiders know. Producers didn't write Jasmine off. They wrote her across borders. So the cliffhanger now isn't whether Jasmine's story is over, it's what TLC plans to profit from next. By the time Jasmine left the US, she wasn't even crying anymore. She'd already done that in a night cell, in the interview room, into a mic taped to her chest, sitting on a floor in Florida, surrounded by 2 suitcases and a suitcase full of shattered expectations. It was a different kind of silence now, the kind that only follows a slow, painful unraveling, one nobody warned her about. Looking back, it's hard not to ask the biggest question of all: did Jasmine ever even stand a chance? From day one, the odds weren't fair. She entered the 90-day franchise with all the common red flags: foreign fiancé, control issues, emotional past, jealousy dialed to 11. But what the show left blurred was the slow suffocation that happens when love gets turned into content and pressure becomes permanent. She wasn't just adjusting to a new country, she was adjusting to a relationship that was already drowning in power imbalance. Gino could work, Jasmine couldn't. Gino had the say on the legal documents, Jasmine was the one waiting for answers. Gino chose when to be on her side and when to retreat into silence. And through all of that, TLC kept rolling. They had every reason to step in, to slow the narrative, to give one of their most emotionally vulnerable cast members room to breathe. But instead, they set up lights, asked for more tears, fed the fire, and when it all detonated, they cut it from air like it never happened. The show made money off her breakdowns, cut promos around her jealousy, roasted her emotional outbursts like memes in motion. They branded her the crazy one, the clingy, chaotic, overly dramatic fiancé from Panama who loved too hard. But they never aired the scene where she cried into a federal officer's sleeve asking if she could call her mom before they took her away. Let that sink in. They filmed her most exposed, terrifying moment and erased it from the story. Gino didn't stop them, didn't defend her, didn't own up to pulling the paperwork that lit the match. He told himself, and millions of viewers, what felt safe: I never meant for this to happen. But when silence protects you and destroys someone else, that's not innocence, that's comfort. So, was Jasmine perfect? Of course not. She often reacted before thinking. Her jealousy made people cringe. Her need for control turned every disagreement into a meltdown. But when you zoom out, those were symptoms, not the cause. She was underfed emotionally, financially uncertain, filmed during every private moment, and stuck in a cycle where saying the wrong sentence could mean being labeled manipulative or unstable forever in front of millions of people. What would you look like under that microscope? And how many fans would still be rooting for you? At the center of it, all she really wanted was certainty. She wanted to know where she stood, what they were building. If the man she left everything for would still have her back when cameras weren't around. Instead, her visa died off-screen, and Gino allegedly asked for some space to think. What Jasmine got was a country's door slamming shut behind her, and the audience, those still watching, got gaslit. Told she went on a break. Edited into a woman who left, not one who was taken. Here's your retention trigger, plant this one hard. If reality TV lets you erase reality when the truth gets legally messy, How many other stories have we never seen the real ending to? Whether this is Gino's redemption arc or Jasmine's lowest moment, that's not ours to write. But what's fact is this: the power dynamics that play out on screen aren't fake. The laws are real. The consequences are irreversible. And when production teams are allegedly warned of legal risks, say nothing to the cast, edit the story to look harmless, and then pitch a new series abroad using the same woman's pain as inspiration. That's not entertainment, that's engineering. So now audiences are split. Some accuse Jasmine of being too reckless. Others say Gino was emotionally manipulated. Some blame TLC for staging the chaos. Others claim Jasmine knew more than she let on. But no matter where you fall, it's impossible to look at this and still call it a love story. It was a countdown dressed up as a commitment, a breakup disguised as miscommunication, and a cover-up sold as camera-ready content. And guess what? TLC is sending crews to Panama again. They want to film her in her new chapter, starting over, rebuilding. They're hoping fans will forgive, forget, and fall back into the cycle. The same cycle that nearly swallowed her. Here's the final sting. If the same producers who buried her trauma now want to profit from her recovery, are they telling the truth this time? Or writing a sequel to the silence? That answer's still loading. But when it drops, you'll want to hit play. Because something tells me this story isn't done yet.